The Sahel slides from late afternoon into a rust-colored dusk. Heat shimmers over thorn scrub and broken rock and wind-carved ridges. And a shallow wadi cuts the plain like a scar. Red dust hangs in the air and clings to cockpit glass, turning the light soft and mean. A lone acacia stands off the wadi mouth, a dark pin in a wide map. Capto. Aaron Landslide Parker of the United States Air Force flies the A-10C as flight lead. Call sign, Hog 11. She is calm on the radios and methodical on the controls. A pilot who reads ground like weather and trusts checklists under stress. People once labeled her too cautious after a pass no-shot decision that spared civilians during a confused fight. The name stuck, but the reason never left her mind. Clipped bursts crackle through degraded comms from the wadi as terrain and rock spines chew the signal. Senior Chief Mike Dalton of the SEAL Element reports that his team is pinned by intersecting fire. One operator is wounded, and the enemy is pushing a flank with technical trucks mounting JTAC heavy machine guns. Dismounted fighters spread along the ridge, and there is a suspected shoulder-fired anti-air threat in the area. Overlord asks Hog 11 to hold while intelligence remains incomplete and a faster platform moves toward the stack. Aaron acknowledges, keeps the tone steady, checks the moving map against ground features, and cross-checks altitude blocks while holding west side. She notes the acacia, the black rock spine, and the shallow wadi that masks friendly radios. A controller on the ground will own terminal attack authority when it is time. And Aaron keeps that in mind. Red dust freckles the canopy and turns the sun into a dull coin. In the empty pause between calls, she hears the memory of a GAU-8 note. The kind that will one day echo in a wadi when lives depend on it. The lone acacia fixes the picture like a compass point and steadies her breathing. She holds position and begins to rebuild the fight in her head. Patient, precise, and ready for them all. Red dust hangs over the Sahel and turns the light copper. Heat shimmers off thorn scrub and broken rock that frame a shallow wadi. A black rock spine cuts the ridge and holds the eye. A lone acacia near the wadi mouth becomes a quiet landmark. Capt. Aaron Landslide Parker leads an A-10C as Hog 11. She grew up flying crop dusters and learned to read wind. She reads ground the same way and trusts what it says. Her hands stay calm even when the radios crawl with static. People remember her for ugly weather miracles that saved hard days. They also remember a pass no shot that spared civilians. Some still call her too cautious when they forget the facts. She carries the reason and lets the noise pass by. The ground team moves under that same dust and heat. Senior Chief Mike Dalton leads a small SEAL element with a partner force. So, one Tyler Brooks is a JTAC qualified controller on the ground. Terminal Attack Authority sits with him and stays there. Overlord manages the broader picture and tracks sensors and collection. That voice asks Hog 11 to hold while the feed clears. Aaron acknowledges and keeps the stack tidy while she watches the map. She keeps the tone level and the checklists close. Hog 12 is Lieutenant Alex Reed, and he sits high. He checks fuel state and spacing and waits for tasking. He stays offset and watches for any climb or plume. He is the quiet margin that gives time. The enemy is not quiet at all along the ridge. Technical trucks with JTAC heavy machine guns angle for a flank. Dismounted fighters probe gaps and search for a clean line. There is rumor of a shoulder-fired air threat in the area. Comms stay clipped and rough as terrain masks the net. The exfil window keeps shrinking and the light keeps fading. Aaron notes how the wadi bends and how the dust pools. She checks sensors and watches for any change. She lines up thoughts for later if the call comes. Final attack headings sit in her mind like arrows on glass. Marking methods settle in as IR strobes and green smoke. She keeps faith with the JTAC and waits. Aaron breathes and lets the picture grow steady and clear. She holds and builds a mental map that fits the ground. Caution is how she earns control when minutes turn heavy. She waits to turn that control into action when it matters. The air calms just enough for voices to cut through the static. Terrain still bites the signal, but words now land clean. Erin feels the net steady and the picture sharpen. She decides the fight needs absolute clarity. She proposes Type 1 control to lock in positive identification. She wants both aircraft and controller to see the same target at the same moment. That is how you keep people alive when the ground is crowded. That is how you turn caution into control. So 1. Tyler Brooks runs terminal attack from the wadi edge. He is the JTAC qualified controller and he owns the final call. He builds a concise 9-line that fits the dust and the terrain. He sets the rules with steady calm. He marks friendlies with IR strobes at the positions that matter. He adds green smoke at the mouth of the wadi as a visual cue. He defines a final attack, heading of 140 to 170. He notes danger close and the need for strict geometry. Erin listens and tracks the brief against the moving map. She executes a full readback that covers target, restrictions, attack heading, and abort code. Her tone stays even and professional. Nothing extra rides on her words. Hog 12 is still Lieutenant Alex Reed, and he holds high and offset. He maintains vertical and lateral spacing while he scans for any shoulder-fired launch signature. He calls fuel state when needed and stays patient. He is the watchful layer above the dust. Overlord manages the larger picture and the flow of ISR. That voice tracks timing and confirms holdings without touching terminal control. The net respects the rolls as pressure builds. The plan remains clean even as seconds get heavy. Erin rolls the geometry in her head one more time. She aligns timing with the ground and the wind. She checks slant range, escape path, and safe egress. She looks at the acacia and fixes the line. The JTAC gives cleared hot for Type 1. Erin calls in from the south and starts the run with calm hands. Her eyes stay outside and her mind stays inside the plan. She keeps the wadi off limits. She holds just short of the trigger. The nose is steady and the pipper settles like a held breath. Everything that matters is aligned. Control sits in the cockpit and in the wadi at the same time. Dust hangs like a veil, and Erin drops the A-10C just above it. She uses the broken terrain to mask the run and keeps the wadi off her nose. Final attack heading sits in her mind as 140 to 170. She eases the jet into the lane she planned. The cleared hot from the last control is the key that opens the pass. So 1. Tyler Brooks keeps terminal authority on the ground and manages the flow. Erin treats his brief like rails and stays inside them. She keeps her updates short and clean as narration. She angles for an offset that protects the shallow wadi where the team is pinned. No overflight of friendlies and no lazy geometry. The lone acacia pins her reference like a tack on a map. The black rock spine frames the left limit of fire. She rides the pipper toward the technical truck that holds the flank. Slant range sits in the sweet spot where the gun is honest. She chooses a short controlled slash with the GAU-8. The goal is engine block, not bodywork, not the wadi. The gun speaks in a hard burst and then goes quiet. An API and HEI mix bites into metal where it matters. The truck slews sideways and the engine coughs and dies. The enfilade angle collapses with it. Hog 12 remains high and offset and keeps the scan wide. Lilt. Alex Reed watches for any shoulder-fired launch and any telltale plume. He confirms nothing in the air and keeps vertical and lateral spacing. His patience buys margin for the next move. Erin calls herself off safe west in her head and follows the egress plan. She checks for threats on the exit and holds flares in reserve, unless the risk shifts. Airspeed settles and the nose comes up to her block. The cockpit returns to quiet habit. Static on the net thins for a heartbeat and then steadies. The ground team finds a thin breath inside that sudden quiet. The wadi feels a shade wider, even if the dust still stings. The acacia stands where it stood and keeps the picture simple. Erin climbs back to her block and resets her mind. She lines up fuel, headings, and deconfliction like tools on a bench. Sensors sweep and her eyes work the same lanes as before. Control returns to a steady hum as she scans for the next move. The fighters along the ridge start to bunch under the cover of broken rock. The shallow wadi still holds the seal element in a tight pocket. Red dust hangs in the air and softens the horizon. The lone acacia marks the mouth like a quiet compass. Capped. Erin Landslide Parker selects Hydra 70 rockets and confirms that guided APKWS is available. She keeps danger close discipline in mind as a hard boundary. Type 1 control remains, with So-1 Tyler Brooks on the ground. He confirms friendlies marked with IR strobes and green smoke at the wadi mouth. Brooks enforces a final attack heading of 140 to 170. Erin nods to the geometry and keeps the wadi clear of her nose. She frames the ridgeline inside those limits and watches the wind drag the dust. Her focus settles on the cluster that threatens to break loose. Hog 12 is Lieutenant Alex Reed, and he stays high and offset. He holds vertical and lateral spacing and watches for any shoulder-fired launch. He checks fuel and keeps the scan wide for movement beyond the ridge. His quiet watch buys time that no one says out loud. Erin manages slant range, so the rockets arrive honest and tight. She ripples a controlled string to build a wall across the ridge face. Guided shots. Where used, pick edges that force the fighters to break formation. The goal is to scatter the mass without pulling danger toward the wadi. The ridge comes apart as shapes dive for cover. Erin calls herself off safe in her head and takes the clean egress to the west. She scans for threats and holds flares in reserve, unless the risk shifts. The cockpit noise falls back to a steady hum. Rockets win this moment because they shape space without the footprint of heavier ordnance. Ripple count discipline protects friendlies and preserves options for later. The ground element finds a longer breath and starts to reset positions. Erin climbs to her block and builds the next picture in her mind. The ridge settles into a strange quiet that feels wrong. Erin catches a shape that does not move like the others. Two figures crouch low, with a tube held in a patient angle, and faces turned skyward rather than toward the wadi. Red dust clings to them, and the stillness reads like a tell. So-1 Tyler Brooks keeps Type 1 control and owns the final call. Friendlies are marked with IR strobes and green smoke at the mouth of the wadi. He restates the geometry and reminds the net of danger close limits. Final attack heading is 140 to 170, and no one forgets it. Erin chooses a shallow, offset gun run with the GAU-8. She will not overfly the wadi, and she will keep the friendlies outside the cone. Slant range sits where the gun is clean and the pattern is tight. She arms the gun and sets her mind on a short, disciplined burst. Hog 12 is Lieutenant Alex Reed, and he holds high and offset. He scans for any launch signature and watches the skyline for a smoke spear. He maintains vertical and lateral spacing and keeps fuel and spacing calls ready. Overlord tracks ISR and timing at the theater level, but does not touch terminal control. Erin rolls in from the lane that fits the heading. The Pipper settles just left of center mass to account for drift and a quick jink on exit. The gun speaks in a brief slash, and the figures break apart under the strike. No plume rises, and the ridge does not answer with a launch. She takes the egress as planned and keeps flares in reserve, unless the threat shifts. A gentle jink clears the nose and buys a second of margin. She calls herself off safe to the west in her head and climbs back to her block. The threat picture steadies, and the ground element holds its line. The window for exfil is shrinking as the light thins and dust thickens. A wounded seal must move across open ground toward a temporary landing zone north of the wadi. The lone acacia sits like a pointer, and the black rock spine frames the route. Every minute carries more risk than the last. Capped. Erin Landslide Parker stays calm at the controls and on the net. She times controlled GAU-8 suppression passes so the team can bound on her impact. She keeps the final attack heading in mind as 140 to 170. She never allows an overflight of the shallow wadi where friendlies hold. So, Tyler Brooks runs Type 1 control from the ground and owns terminal attack authority. Friendlies are marked by IR strobes with green smoke at the wadi mouth. He restates danger close limits and confirms geometry that protects the movement. Aaron accepts the restrictions as rails that guide each pass. Hog 12 is Lieutenant Alex Reed, high and offset above the dust. He maintains vertical and lateral deconfliction and watches for any shoulder-fired launch. He tracks fuel state and spacing and calls the picture when needed. His steady orbit gives Aaron room to work. Aaron rolls in on the first timed pass with an offset that leaves the wadi clear. Slant range is set where the gun is honest and the pattern is tight. She uses a short controlled burst that lands like a hammer stroke against the ridge. The burst becomes a moving wall that masks the team as they haul the casualty. She takes a clean egress and resets to her block while the team gains 10 yards. The rhythm repeats with patience and care. In and off calls run like a heartbeat in her head. The abort code sits ready if anything shifts out of limits. Overlord manages the broader picture and provides timing on the inbound helicopter. No aircraft enters the landing zone yet, and the corridor remains a plan on paper. Aaron keeps the geometry pure and the pacing steady. The acacia and the rock spine stay fixed in her scan. Each pass buys another segment of ground without dragging danger toward friendlies. Short bursts conserve rounds and keep noise under control. The suppression wall rises and falls in measured beats. The casualty trail turns toward the landing zone and opens a narrow chance. Aaron climbs back to her block and checks fuel, headings, and spacing. The threat picture steadies as the ridge loses momentum. She breathes once, lines up the next lane, and sets timing with the ground. The next pass waits on the edge of the dust and the light. The helicopter pushes toward a temporary landing zone north of the wadi as red dust thickens into brownout. Capped. Aaron Landslide Parker holds in a coordinating role, much like a FAC-A, while keeping terminal authority on the ground. She keeps Hog 11 west with guns cold and eyes wide. The lone acacia and the black rock spine bracket the scene like steady rails. So Tyler Brooks retains Type 1 control and manages clearances for any protective fires. Friendlies remain marked by IR strobes with green smoke at the mouth of the wadi. He maintains danger, close discipline, and keeps the geometry tight. Final attack heading remains 140 to 170 if a re-clear is needed. Aaron declares a north to south helo corridor green and watches traffic lanes like a chessboard. She holds her block and keeps the plan clean so the helicopter can settle into dust. Hog 12 stays high and offset with Lieutenant Alex Reed, preserving vertical and lateral spacing. He watches for any shoulder-fired launch and keeps fuel calls ready. Overlord rides the net with timing on the inbound helicopter and tracks bingo for the A-10C flight. That voice manages the larger picture and leaves terminal control to the ground where it belongs. Aaron keeps comms short and calm so no one steps on the net. The rhythm is steady and simple even as the dust grows thicker. Rotor wash lifts the red world into a swirling wall, and the landing zone turns blind at arm's length. Aaron holds eyes on the perimeter and keeps the wadi clear, ready to return to guns only if the JTAC re-clears hot. She protects safe egress paths for both fixed wing and helicopter. The nose stays pointed away from friendlies, and the corridor remains open. The helicopter lifts with the team aboard and climbs out through the dust like a slow breath. Aaron calls the airspace clear and resets to her block with engines even and checklists smooth. Hog 12 slides back into place and the picture quiets. The flight holds ready to depart as the field settles behind them. The landing zone is empty air and settling dust. The radios fall to a calm murmur as rotors fade toward the horizon. Capta. Aaron Landslide Parker holds the net steady, checks her block, and keeps her voice level. Senior Chief Mike Dalton comes up with a simple thanks that carries more weight than a shout. Aaron answers with professional brevity and humility, then lets the channel breathe. She logs the moment in her head like a line in a logbook. No flourish. No victory call. Only the quiet discipline that brought them to this point. She watches the shallow wadi shrink and feels the tension bleed away. Overlord confirms the team is off the ground and instructs the A-10C flight to return to base when able. Aaron acknowledges, checks fuel state with Hog 12, and verifies systems. Lil Tanta. Alex Reed maintains spacing above and offset while she turns to an outbound heading. The picture is orderly. The rolls are intact. And the sky seems wider. Red dust freckles the canopy and turns the sun into a soft coin as the ridgeline slips behind. In her mind, the echo of the GAU 8 inches, the wadi sounds less like violence and more like a promise kept. The lone acacia holds in memory as a marker that pointed the way out. Aaron banks toward the fading light and lets the field fall away beneath her. Carrying the recognition without drama and settling into the quiet relief that discipline earns. The dust settles and the sky opens. And what matters most becomes clear. Capt. Aaron Landslide Parker of the United States Air Force leads her A-10C home with radios calm and hands steady. The day reminds us that caution is not weakness. It is disciplined control that keeps people alive when minutes get sharp. Red dust on the canopy becomes a quiet teacher. It tells you to see through confusion and keep the picture simple. It asks for patience, checklists, and honest scans. It rewards the pilot who looks twice before acting once. The echo of the GAU 8 inches the wadi is not about noise. It is the sound of a promise kept at the exact second it matters. Short, controlled bursts that land where they should and nowhere else. Precision that lets people move while the world tries to hold them still. The lone acacia stands in the mind as an anchor point. It guided talk-ons and kept bearings true when dust tried to erase the map. It gave everyone a common language when stress climbed. It marked the way out so the team could find the door. This safety was not luck. It was correct close air support done clean. Type 1, control with a clear 9 line and positive identification. Final attack headings set as 140 to 170. Friendlies marked with IR strobes and green smoke. And strict deconfliction with the helicopter corridor. Aaron balanced low and offset geometry with short bursts and clean egress. Terminal Attack Authority stayed with SO1 Tyler Brooks. The JTAC qualified controller on the ground. Hog 12. Lilt. Alex Reed. Held spacing high and offset and watched for any shoulder-fired threat. Overlord managed the broader picture and fuel timing without touching terminal control. No new drama is needed to make the point. Precision under pressure is built from humility. Checklists, clear roles, and respect for the people on the ground. That is what a viewer should carry long after the dust fades. Aaron turns for home with steady hands, a steady heart, and a calm sky where discipline did what speed alone could not. Start with a 5-second hook that anyone can feel. A broken radio call stumbles in. A brief BRRRT sits under it, and the frame freezes. Simple icons label the wadi, the lone acacia, and the enemy technicals. The audience knows the where before the why and leans in. Keep the overlays clean so the story breathes. A minimal 9-line card appears when needed, not before. Arrows mark the final attack heading of 140 to 170. IR, strobe, and green smoke markers show friendlies, and a small minimap traces each bound during the move on my impact sequence. Pacing lands as a chain of micro-wins that viewers can follow. First, the flank is stopped. Then, the mass on the ridge breaks under rockets. Then the manpad's tail is caught and cut. Then suppression opens a lane for the casualty move. Terminal attack control stays with the JTAC on the ground and never drifts. Fixed wing and helicopter deconfliction stays obvious in the visuals, so Risk never feels hand-waved. Narration keeps jargon in plain words, while staying correct for those who know. Type 1 control is explained as everyone seeing the same target at the same time. A 9-line is described as the clean checklist that keeps people safe. The tone is human and steady, so hardware supports people rather than stealing the frame. Sound design respects the room. The GAU-8 comes up under the voice at key beats and slides back again. Recognition falls near silence, so the emotion can land without being pushed. A soft call invites viewers to share the story if they believe that discipline under pressure saves lives. No new events are added, and all ranks, roles, and terms remain correct. The strategy promises accuracy without friction and warmth without sentimentality. The final promise is simple. The takeaway is not speed or bravado, but calm control that carried a team home. Red dust thins, and the field lies quiet beneath a wide evening sky over the Sahel after hard minutes of radio and flame. Capt. Erin Landslide Parker of the United States Air Force guides her A-10C toward home with steady hands. Overlord confirms return to base when able. And the net settles into calm breathing. Hog 12. Lil 10. Alex Reed. Maintains spacing above and offset, while fuel and checks stay on schedule. The camera holds on simple thanks rather than noise. Senior Chief Mike Dalton is acknowledged for leading the SEAL element through the worst minutes. So, one Tyler Brooks is credited as the JTAC qualified controller who kept terminal attack authority on the ground. Roles stayed correct. Discipline stayed firm. And that is how people left alive. 3 closing images carry the feeling home. Red dust on the canopy reminds us to see clearly through confusion and fatigue. The echo of the GAU-8 fades under the voice like a promise kept to men on the ground. The lone acacia remains a quiet marker that pointed the way out when everything blurred. Real Cast Moments returns soon with another true-to-life look at calm control under pressure. Next time, we will explore how clear roles, a clean 9-line, Type 1 control, and humble precision carried people home without fanfare. Thank you for watching. And please share this story if it moved you or someone you know. Credits roll with care for accuracy and privacy, listing only the roles already shared and leaving operational details in the dust.